Overall, through everything we're doing, our goal is to help people at least not make old mistakes and try to make new ones instead, as much as possible.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler, coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland in New Zealand, and I'm joined this week by Zach Semke. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Matthew.
It seems like it's been a while since we've been on the podcast together.
I know. It's so great to see you and to be sharing the microphones.
Yeah. And we've also got Ilka with us this week. Great to see you as well, Ilka.
Yeah, great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while as well.
Well, we've been traveling and experiencing Passive House conferences at the same time in different parts of the world. So we're going to come back and talk about Ireland and the great time that I was able to have in Belfast, looking at the conference there. But this week we're going to focus on your time in Milwaukee, which was the PhiusCon, which was, I've had to listen to all your great work there, Ilka, covering, it's such a hard thing to try and summarize a whole 2 days of content, but I think you've done a really good job, which is a real treat for listeners this week. But before we get into that, Zach, we've got a few people to thank.
Indeed. I want to thank Cascadia Windows and Doors for being our sponsor of the week this week and making our programming possible here at Passive House Accelerator. And also a special thank you to Icon Windows for underwriting the coverage by the Accelerator of PhiusCon, including the interview work that Ilka and Kristof did for the Passive House podcast. So a big thank you to Icon Windows and Doors.
All right. Well, I think we'll jump in, but Ilka, just as a brief introduction, you got to hang out with Kristof a fair bit in Milwaukee.
Yeah. We decided to do these interviews together again. We had done it before, covering Nessie in the spring, and really enjoyed it. It's kind of nice to meet up in between the sessions and just kind of recap and interview people together.
Yeah. Well, I think you do a really good job of setting the scene for us in this compilation. So we'll dive in and we'll catch up briefly at the end.
It's good to see you again, Kristof. We're here in Milwaukee for PhiusCon 2025. And the last time we saw each other was in Boston at the Nessie conference, right, beginning of the year. Back then, we decided to do a joint interview covering the conference, and we decided to do that again. I'm really excited about it.
Me too. Thank you so much for offering, and I was happy to say yes to this, and I can't believe it's almost been a year since that. What a busy time.
I know. Is there anything you've been up to since then?
Yeah, actually, I have a bit of an announcement to make. A lot of people in the community already know this, but my wife and I are building our first passive house. And as a consultant on so many, it's really humbling, but also really exciting to see the principals make them happen. Maybe for a different time we can go into that. But yeah, this conference is always such a great experience to come back and see people like you, close friends, dear friends. And the theme this year is performance, purpose, and power of community. And I'm excited to hear what we're going to hear.
Yeah, this power of community, I think that really speaks towards how important it is to once in a while check in with everyone, not just on Zoom, but in person, and just get a little bit, I don't know, of the energy that everyone has. I think combined energy is so uplifting, and I'm excited to see what's new, what's exciting, and I will be able to draw from that, I think, throughout the next year.
I think that one of the exciting changes that's coming, it's like a big kind of a decade-old change, is really from energy performance and durability performance, really adding in health, healthy home, healthy planet, but also this embodied carbon is coming in, even in the embodied carbon of mechanical systems is coming in. So that to me is just like probably the most exciting part of the Passive House community, which is that there's always this forward principle at work, and we're always on that edge.
Yeah, I think that's what I appreciate about Phius a lot too, that they just keep working and keep moving forward. Yeah. They take the feedback, they see what's going on and what works, what doesn't work, and just keep going. So yeah, let's see what the next 2 days have in stock for us.
Yeah, that sounds great.
But first, I was actually here yesterday for the pre-conference, which was pretty awesome.
And you presented, right?
I did, yeah, I did.
How'd that go?
It went very well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Well, I got to talk to Jennie. So Jennie is one of the co-organizers of this whole conference. I got to talk to her. Let's listen to that. Jennie.
Hello.
Hello. So this is the beginning of PhiusCon 2025 in Milwaukee. We're kind of heading towards the end of day one. Today was all workshops and registration, and people are arriving, and there's quite a bit of excitement around. But you are the person behind the whole conference, right?
I'm one of the co-chairs for our conference. Michael Franco and I, Jennie Eber, work together to steer, host, run around the conference. We work with the certification staff to help review everyone, the committee. We have our board members involved. It is a team effort, but Michael Franco and I are in charge of the front sheet, so we're the ones remembering what's here and there and in the contracts and trying to make sure everything runs smoothly. Yeah.
So this is your fifth year?
Fifth year at PhiusCon. My first one was in Tarrytown, New York, which was COVID-ish, kind of the re-emerging. That was pretty magical. I think for the team, we had doubled during COVID, so it was my first big event. Then it was a lot of people's return to PhiusCon, and that was really great. So I couldn't have had really a better first step. And then last year we didn't put on PhiusCon, but we did the Pro Forum, and I will say we operated it from a similar mindset of when you get your feet on the ground at the conference, but it was just geared a little bit differently. So 2025 Milwaukee PhiusCon is back in full force with a few lessons learned from the Pro Forum.
Yeah, great. I mean, I was at the Pro Forum and I actually really, really liked it. So what were the lessons learned and what did you do different this year at PhiusCon?
So one of the groundbreaking things at PhiusCon, instead of 5 rooms with multiple options and as many speakers as we could pack in, there are 4 rooms, 3 with longer sessions. So each presentation in the 3 rooms is 1 hour. So it gives everyone a bit more time to learn in depth. That's something we did at the Pro Forum, had much longer sessions, either 1 hour or 2 hours, and we found that people really enjoyed having less choice, which we think is very funny, and then also being able to dig into the details and go in depth and ask the questions. And you can do a lot more in an hour than you can in 30-ish minutes, and that's something that I hold very dear and something we want to carry forward. Everyone seemed to like it, so hopefully they'll like it this year, and if people don't, I'm very sure that we'll find out. So
yeah, no, I thought that format was really great last year. What are you really, really excited about? What's new at Phius? What do you want people to know?
Sure. So I should talk about the conference, which I am really excited about. I'm excited to see the presentations. I'm excited for speakers who haven't presented before to get to experience the energy. I'm really excited for the member meeting for the Alliance, to see all of my Alliance members. It's pretty incredible to know that I have over 1,800 members, but to see 400 of them in one room is pretty amazing and something that really gets me through the year. I love when we do the check-in table and I walk up and I know that that's Cameron, I know that's Ilka, I know what Zach looks like from, half a face up the escalator. That's really special. I think one of the things that you'll find out at the lunch session tomorrow is that we have been doing a lot to update our curriculums and roll out standards and establish and refresh things. I don't know what a better word to do that, but our trainings, and just bring everything up to date. Every 3 years we update the standard. Now we're every 3 years going to update the curriculum. That's the goal. But we are, get to show off a brand new builder training that's been revamped and has all the new logos and has been updated to meet the market. And so that's something I'm really excited about. I think that I don't know the right way to say it, leading edge, but we like to be at the forefront of passive building, and our curriculum is now going to look and reflect those updates and that kind of leading that we like to do.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear all about it tomorrow at lunch. And yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for all the presentations, but mostly the energy. I just feel like we need it right now to really just be inspired by people around us. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Was thinking about this last night is that I don't go to a lot of conferences, but I don't know that there's as much hugging at most professional conferences. I think it's wonderful. People are excited to see each other. We have new staff, so we've, again, almost doubled. And there's younger members of staff who've been on for maybe a year, and they are recognizing names as we're laying out name tags, and we're checking people in, and the people who are checking in, our constituents, are saying, "Oh, you're Maggie. I'm so excited to meet you in person." I think that's really special, and it's something that we all crave as a staff. This is like a big lift for us, but it's also one of the most energizing things we do. So the people, the atmosphere make it really great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Ilka.
Hey, Kristof.
Just are getting out of the opening keynote session, which had a lot of award recipients. And it's just after that now, and we managed to sit with Tom Bassett-Dilley and Kai Fast and Sayo on her team. So here...
Yeah, it was awesome to dive a little bit deeper into the keynote and get a little recap and hear about the projects that won some awards.
Mm-hmm. And to hear, I particularly appreciated hearing from Sayo and her team. You'll hear some Japanese spoken and translated coming up here. So I hope you enjoy this.
Yeah, I'm Tom Bassett-Dilley. I'm an architect in CPHC in Oak Park, which is a suburb just east that borders Chicago. It's where Frank Lloyd Wright made famous with the Prairie School of Architecture. And yeah, so that was the plenary I got to give this year. And we recently completed a project, which is a 44-unit Source Zero multifamily that I was a CPHC for, not the architect for. And that was an amazing project because David Pope, the executive director of the Residence Corporation, was exemplary in his ability to get a team together and hold them together. It took a big team, a first-time architect, first-time builder, and an owner's rep who was also really great. You know, you got a lot of people to keep aligned, you know, and a complex project. So yeah, we modeled it and we coached them through. He wanted more glass in the beginning, of course, and you know, it was a really fascinating exercise in modeling that when we were above like 35% glass, there's absolutely nothing we could do with the envelope to make the building comply with the metrics. We got it below 30, like 27, and just all of a sudden everything got, I won't say easy, but it got totally manageable. Mm-hmm. And then just a little bit of shading, a little bit of, you know, different tweaks. So yeah, that was one. And then the other project was a historic building in a historic district in Oak Park where we retrofitted a 1904 house to Source Zero, which was such a blast. Great owner. It was a real challenge, you know, building science wise and everything, but we had a builder who hadn't done it before who was just, I mean, what I find is that these custom builders who love doing good projects, whether it's a stair or a siding detail, I mean, they can do thermal envelope too if you just talk to them about it. And so it wasn't a challenge for them to deliver that with the rater on board, who was terrific. Eco Achievers is just, they were just right there, you know, whenever they needed to be to explain or ask a question or help them along. So yeah, it was a good team project. Yeah, so those were our submissions this year. And yeah, the 7 Van Buren, the project called the Pierce got the Best Source Zero, and then the house got the honorable mention for retrofit, I guess it was. Yeah.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah,
Thanks.
congratulations.
I think I would like to hear a little bit more about the keynote, which was awesome, by the way. And I really liked how you started out with just kind of going a little bit through the evolution of passive building and Phius and your projects as well. And then I would really like to just hear about, what's kind of in stock in the future and what you're excited about.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was fun to prep for that talk, and because I think the thing is that it's not just about any one of our work, but really how we all fit together into something bigger. And I got to tell you, of all the groups I've ever been a part of, and it's not a hell of a lot, this is the most open source, kind of curious and also adventurous, I think, in a sense, group, and that's just been really great. I mean, we can air our dirty laundry, we can congratulate each other for good things that are done, all of that. So yeah, my sense when I was prepping for the keynote was that it's really become it's a different time, because it was, when I first started coming 16 years ago, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make passive? There hadn't been any done in the Chicago area, there weren't many done in the country at all when that first conference happened. And so now they're all over the place. And I think that's a great testament to a community of people figuring it out and sharing it with each other. And so, yeah, that's why I brought in my dad's work from the beginning, because actually kind of what got me unstuck from like thinking about how am I going to talk about my work? Well, I'm not going to talk about my work. I'm talking about our work through the lens of what I've done, because that's what I saw him doing his whole career. It was like, just putting a little piece in the big edifice of science, So, yeah.
Yeah, Tom, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, the time we've been in this Passive House community for a long time. And the Phius people, the passive building people, have been swimming upstream in the industry for a long, long time. And here we now find ourselves, even in the larger context, we're swimming upstream like societally in some sense. Like
right now,
energy is not recognized as something to be conserved. And so, but we're still swimming upstream. In some sense, there's a steadiness to that. And, how do we do this? How do we keep going? That question hasn't really changed. It's still there. It's just larger. And, yeah, I wondered, Kai, if you had any thoughts about working with this during this time.
I always have thoughts, Kristof. I want to say that I loved when you pulled out the cell diagram in particular. That was like the moment I knew. I was like, oh, this is going to be something interesting, because like when you think about the cell is like a microcosm of the whole universe, and it's a microcosm of the Phius community, which is a microcosm of the larger building community. And when I see the cell, it always reminds me of just the degree to which every single one of us is different and has different functions, and we have to work together, and I don't have to be Kristof, and Kristof doesn't have to be me, and none of us are Jacob or Kusin, and that's fine. Like every single function in that cell is doing its thing, and it's important that all the rest of the people out there are doing things the way they're doing it, and we are going to help to bring them along, but at the same time, what I love about the building conferences is that we have so many, we've got the engineers and we've got the energy modelers and the architects and everyone, and that's what it takes to turn sunlight into life. That's I love it.
Said.
Yes.
Well, and that really goes along too with the conference theme or topic that Katrin was talking about, which is performance, purpose, and power of community, because that cell image is really about, or representing the power of community, because he, as you said, he can't possibly be everyone and do everything at the same time. And that's, this kind of feel of power within the community. That's actually kind of what brought me here this year. I mean, I've been coming because it's just awesome every year, but I think it's been, in particular this year, I just felt a little, and you kind of alluded to as well, kind of heavy, right? And coming here was just such a, I was so looking forward to it because I knew it was going to be so positive and encouraging, and that is the power of community.
I was really in kind of a dark place before Katrin called, and I didn't realize how much, you know, until I thought about having to get up in front of people and talk. And so it actually kicked me into gear. But the great thing was that I had another event a couple weeks ago, the Illinois Green Alliance annual get-together, the Emerald Awards and Limelight Celebration, they call it. And it was that same feeling. And I realized that is really powerful, is that connection of people, and it does feed us. And so, yeah, when I was prepping for the talk, I had a lot more kind of political stuff that I edited out, not because I didn't want to offend people, but because really I didn't want to kind of go too many directions. But yeah, I mean, the swimming upstream, I think there are a lot of us who just like that, you know. We just kind of, I always have, you know, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of something to prove, or I don't know what it is exactly, but right now, yeah, the current's just gotten a lot stronger. But so the swimming upstream thing, I think, is a thing, but I think that's also how just anybody makes progress. That when I look at the community and what we keep doing, that it really does persist through all kinds of worse headwinds than we're seeing right now. I mean, you think about scientists who fled Nazi Germany. You think about, you know, artists who fled, you know, a communist regime in Russia, or, you know, a socialist, whatever you want to call it, what the correct term would be politically. And it's persisted. It does not die. Yeah. Because it's what keeps us going. It's life, you know. So anyway, there was a lot more philosophical stuff I edited out too, but it's really, I think, the thing that this community is part of, that big picture of how we just move this humanity thing forward. Yeah.
So Kai, we were talking just before this, and you were just kind of playing off of what Tom just said. Mm-hmm. You were basically saying, like, keep your head down, work within your range of effectiveness, kind of your sphere of influence. And while doing that, you managed to win an award. Did you know you were going to win the award today?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? So
yeah.
It leaked out.
Well, no, they let you know because they want to know if someone's going to be there to accept it. So I had high hopes, certainly, when we submitted it, because I worked really hard to get that one.
Yeah, tell us about
through
that.
The pike. Well, that project is an example of something that was a shoo-in and should have been really easy.
In what sense? Shoo-in?
Well, you know, the geometry was just, you know, simple and good. The window ratio, all the components were, like, it was, you know, a classic, not very complicated building, and the clients were totally on board.
Could you tell us what your role was on the project?
Oh, yeah.
And which category you won?
Sorry, yes. So, hey, I'm Kai Fast. I'm the sustainability specialist at Kaplan Thompson Architects, and I was the CPHC on this project. It was a single-family home.
Beautiful house.
Yeah, it's a really nice single-family home.
Awesome.
I have one last comment. Just thinking about what you just said about the Raider, right? That's a challenging space to hold psychologically. I've done a lot of code tests. I've been a Raider for many years.
Yeah.
And Tom's comment about the ecosystem, or the cell, right? There's the mitochondria and the cell walls. You know, who's the container and what's happening within it. I think we need to recognize that all the roles are important, and that we're not done figuring out how to deliver passive buildings to society, including how to do the certification process. So good for you for persevering and making that relationship work out.
Yeah, I'll just add one other thing on that topic, because I have two things I rant about. One of them is ecosystem, and the other one is neurodivergence, which goes back to ecosystem, because in the ecosystem, things thrive when there's alignment between what they are and the niche they're being expected to fill. Yeah. And so, you know, we are in a building industry that, we are in an industry that has a overrepresentation of neurodivergent personalities, and for that, we're not always very great at finding that alignment. So that's something that I'm struggling personally in my professional life, is finding ways to develop my role in a way that is aligned with the particular difficulties that I have. And, sometimes you can see it happening for someone else, and I think that's really interesting and something we should be better at.
Mm-hmm. But it's also about finding the strength, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because, there's always the enormous strength on the other side, and really figuring out what that is.
My spreadsheets are baller.
Yeah.
So, what are you excited about? Like moving forward? In life, in architecture, and Passive House, mostly in Passive House, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am definitely most excited by the way we create beautiful environments. Environments that are more aligned with life, with nature, and that's such a big thing. It's an endless task for all of us, and it's what we do. It's what we do as humans, I think. So, for me, what that has been about lately is working with more plant-based building materials, and it's been thinking about biophilic design. And I guess the way I see it is like the first projects were just like, how do we do Passive House, figuring it out, like details, and I wasn't putting my attention as much into kind of the more refined ideas about design so much. I mean, I'm still trying to do my best architecture, but now it's like, okay, I've got that technique down. It's like you're a tennis player or something. You're not having to think about your backswing or how you're transferring your weight. You can now think about where you're going to put the ball, And so, for me, it's more about design. So in 2018, I finally gave in to a voice that had been just yammering at me for years to get out and paint landscapes, fine art painting. I've been thinking about it for so long, and my wife's like, do it. The time is right. But when you do that, in oils at least, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's the easel, there's the palette, there's the the setup for doing plein air when you're standing out there in the landscape painting, and I was just so fascinated with it, and still am. But the thing about that I realized is that I think I did it because maybe I needed that connection to something more creative, more about beauty and about soul and about that really direct connection to nature that you make when you stand there and consider how you're going to translate something that's talking its beauty to you down into a piece that you can memorialize and bring home or share with somebody or whatever. So that to me is all one thing. So that's kind of really what I'm excited about, is thinking about what we're doing more of a cultural standpoint, more of a that architecture is what you look at when you study civilizations, right? And so the passive part of it is absolutely essential, but what's really exciting to me is how we can work that into a world of beauty and of nature.
Passive House, I think, got its roots in the energy realm.
Yeah.
It's all about energy, but, we don't see energy, we don't experience energy emotionally. It's not what elevates our lived experience of a building. I mean, you could argue thermal comfort and maybe when you pay your bill.
So here's the question. Now I live in a house that's near passive, right? And it's great how stable it is and how we feel more just kind of protected by our environment, because it was a 1919 leaky, uninsulated thing. It's the experience of the physical sensations in that building over time that translated into a feeling of security, I guess, is the way I'd say it. Is that the first real cold snap we had after we retrofitted, my wife got out of bed and said, "Hey, the floor's not cold." I was like, "Yeah." And then after a while, we started realizing when the wind starts blowing and the temperature changes suddenly or anything like that, it's stable, and you feel kind of protected. And you can't really see that or feel that when you just go visit a house and you're going to buy it. It's middle of May, and it's like it's house buying season, whatever, you know what I mean? You have no idea how it's going to feel through January. But here's the other side of this question. The thermal comfort aspect is great, right? But we didn't evolve like that at all. We evolved actually with short-term stressors of cold and heat, that our bodies and minds would come back stronger from, right? These hormetic stressors like we seek in a sauna or, an ice bath or whatever. And so what I wonder about passive buildings is like, how do we get that in-between experience? And so far we've done a couple houses where we have screen porches One of them has a fireplace. And to me, that's like the primal thing right there. You know, you've got the ability. So I guess what I'm saying is that if we just live 90% of our time inside buildings and they're these totally stable environments, are we cheating ourselves of something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know, I had a design professor who said you can't use the word should. You know, people are going to do what they're going to do. You should get out and go for a walk, or you should do this, but how do we build it in, you know, so that our buildings actually are giving us all of this? I mean, it's kind of hard to ask somebody to walk outside from their kitchen to their bedroom. Yeah, and I'm just thinking, would I do it, you know? Maybe. My wife, no freaking way. So 2 hallways, okay. You know, and then when you do make those spaces and people enclose them and they try to make them just another enclosed space, and you're like, oh, well, that didn't work. That was supposed to be a screen porch, not a, you know, solarium. So anyway, that's just a question is in my mind. How do we work that in, this more thermal variety and you know, the smells, the sounds. I mean, thank God I've got an ERV with a MERV 14 filter for the outside air, because the wildfire smoke and the expressway a couple blocks away turns that thing black in like a month. I can't believe it. But it's what outdoor areas right now if you live in a city, which almost all of us do, right? So yeah, I guess that's the other thing I'm thinking about. How do we not just make it so steady state that we become like the people in WALL-E? Remember that movie?
Yeah.
By and large.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good thought, and along the biophilic design ideas, right? And I have a very good friend, she teaches biophilic design, and that's always been her thought about Passive House, where she's like, we need to feel the air, we need to know where we are within the seasons, within the lighting for sure. So I think that's a really good thought, yeah, that needs to be put on, or needs to, or should be put on top of Passive House, just like looking at embodied energy and materials that you're using, because that all goes hand in hand too, because if you're surrounding yourself with some kind of styrofoam, it's definitely different than surrounding yourself with like some nature-based materials as well. So yeah, I think there is quite a lot of things to still be excited about and to improve upon, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Sayo. Congratulations on winning an award for a project in Japan. Was this your first Passive House in Japan? Or tell us a little about the project and winning the award.
Thank you, Kristof, and thank you, Ilka. So my name is Sayo Okada. I am an architect and a CPAC and a PhiusCon trainer for CPAC trainings. And I also act as a director of the Passive House Institute Japan, the affiliated group that were with the Phius. So this project was not the first, but second one, but the first in Tokyo.
Okay.
And it's very crowded area, like urban infill. And the projects were designed by the architects who are owner of the house, and the contractor was the owner. So it was the team was small, and I've been training the CPHCs in Japan, and Mr. Tsushima-san is a CPHC, and that was his first Passive House project he was involved. And here, Mr. Sato is the window manufacturer in Japan, the wooden performance windows that were used in the project. So that was about the projects. Yeah.
Awesome. So you're probably the furthest traveling participants, definitely the furthest traveling award winners today. I'm curious about just how you brought Passive House to Japan and how different it is from the States, because you learned to be a CPHC here in the States. You lived in Boston, Sayo. And what are the differences? And did you have to look at the target criteria that Phius gives and adjust it towards your climates and your user values, right?
Yeah, so the Phius a climate-specific target really worked out very well in Japan, because we were the size of California, but it has a similar number of climate zones, within that little islands. So
Similar to California, or
it's a size of the California, but the climate zones in Japan is, we have 7 climate zones, similar to all the U.S. So the Phius climate zone specific standard worked really well. And also our house, typical, the size of the household is much smaller. That worked pretty well because the Phius standard is adjusted to not only climate zones but also size of the house and the occupant number. So it's great, worked great. What the difference is between U.S. and Japan is that the air tightness, concept of air tightness is not as strong as the States, but also they're used to doing air tightness from inside rather than outside, which is exterior air tightness layer is with the interior. So it was, I think that was a little different from the U.S. practices here. And high performance window is, right now we have like several high performance windows, including Busan's windows, but it's similar stages that U.S. went through. Like all the windows and components needs to be imported. So, but it's started to change a bit. So we're in the early stages, but it is becoming a things that small high performance builders started to do. So, yeah.
I'm curious, what's going on in Japan to help spread the word, help make people aware that Passive House exists?
We do some trainings and webinars, free webinars in the evening times, and then try to spread informations that's through Zoom, like webinars and events. And let's see. Yeah, I think that's
such a good question.
Yeah.
And it's mostly you.
Mostly me and some of the builders that were already experiencing a high performance building standard. So but I try to bring the U.S. There's so much examples that I can talk about, and we're trying to scale up from the single family to mid-size to high rise if we can eventually. So I am trying to do the more of the slow curve, but I'm trying to bring all the builders in a picture of the high performance buildings.
So are there any kind of cultural differences that that makes Passive House more or less adoptable in Japan?
The Japanese people likes to be patient. So windows are, basically the weakest part of the buildings, but we can still get a single pane windows with aluminum frame. It's still available. And in order to do the Passive House, the window manufacturer weren't there to help bring the Passive House. So his answer was that, having that window imported wasn't make sense for him. So he started bringing that high solar gain glass and then using Japanese cedar wood frame. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that culturally it is challenging because they are like, okay, house can be cold, we can just put the sweater on. But so that's why there was not a lot of demand for high performance windows, but in order to do the Passive House, we need a good window. So he basically, I will just make one. So that's what.
自分は今CPHC.
He talked about the challenges in Japan. That his area that he works at is Chiba, which is by the ocean, and I think it's about climate 3, the zone 3 here. So it has a lot of humidity, but also has a cold winters as well. So it's a mixed climate, like your climate maybe closer to. Depends on where Texas locations is. So he's saying a challenge is that when you make a high performance buildings, your air conditioning start to not really work. It doesn't have to work as much, but there's a lot of humidity load, like latent load, that how to take care of that is a challenge for that climate zones. I'm sure you are.
Absolutely.
ピアスの基準が非常に
And that's why the activity here is really helpful for his zone, his areas. Also, most of Japan, except for colder climates in the northern part of Japan.
So yeah, that the standards, I think it's important to recognize that the Phius community is growing and the standards are still evolving. And particularly in humid climates, or mixed humid climates, where you have humid climates with cold winters, we're finding that our homes have trouble meeting the heating targets, and that we can fix them by adding west-facing glazing, when in fact it's generally speaking, a cooling climate where you don't want to add, or you could add another appliance in the kitchen, something that generates heat. So there's still some work to do, and I love that the community here is open to that recognition.
So congratulations again, and just kind of looking ahead, what are your goals, in terms of developing Passive House in Japan and
High-rise. Yes, so scale up, I guess, like the same theme as Phius's we're talking about at the conference. Yeah, so from single family to mid to high rise is probably what I want to as a goal. I set as a goal, but it's a lot of work to do. A lot of translations for 2024 standard.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And all the calculators, and so it's a lot of work to do. But it's rewarding that builders are connected in energies, and Japan's imports all the fossil fuels from other countries. So as far as from the energy independent point of view, it is it's a good work to do, and I'm grateful that in that community to strive for that goal.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and have good luck, I guess. What's the right saying? It's not good luck. It's be successful.
So here we are again, everyone, back on day 2 of the conference. And let's talk a little bit about what we saw yesterday.
Yeah.
Anything come up for you?
Yeah, so I guess we both saw a few sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting. One of the ones that really kind of stuck in my head a little bit was the presentation by Galen Stengel about indoor air quality.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so that was really interesting, because what happened is that Galen got called into basically investigating a building that was newly built to Passive House standard, and they had some weird spikes in
PM.1, nanoparticles.
And only in certain apartments, so they couldn't quite figure out what was going on.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed I don't know if he set it up this way, but for me, I love indoor air quality stories, and it was like a whodunit. It was like a page turner. Yeah. So I was like, oh, what's next? Because there was an airport across the river, and there was a train line, and 3 major road lines, and I was sure that's where the PM was coming from.
Yeah.
But then it was non-uniform across the. Yeah, well, and it was about pets. It ended up being potentially pets were a big source of particulate and incense, air fresheners.
Just kind of, I guess, thinking about pets, that you should really increase your ventilation rate if you have 3 dogs in your apartment.
Yeah, it's typically by mass, yeah.
I guess it makes sense. It's just
cats too. If you have a lot of
cats
cats
too. Cooking was a big.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah, the recirculating range hood. Boo.
Yeah.
We've got to get away from thinking that's a good idea, and I think data like that really shows it. Yeah, it was fouling the exhaust vents, and it was quite striking.
Yeah, and incense.
And what else? So air quality, same session. Graham Irwin had an intriguing way, as he always does, of engaging a topic. He had this 3-part logic of living through wildfires, living with, and living well. And living through was, there's a wildfire and my house might burn down. And so life safety, it's top priority. The alarm bells are going, but it's also, in the grand scheme of things, it's a small population affected, versus living with wildfires. Like, the Canadian wildfires will envelop all of the Northeast, right? And so now, we're thinking about large populations that, impacted, and it's not necessarily a life safety, though it's certainly a health risk. And then there's living well, which is, I guess, the peace of mind of knowing you have a good envelope that can keep the particulates out, that is well designed with fire safety in mind. And Phius standards, passive standards, lend themselves well to all three. Yeah, it was just tremendous. Mm-hmm. And then it got nerdy and specific. But,
yeah. No, to me it was interesting because I guess fortunately have never had to fire harden any buildings, but well, it's good to know how to do it.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. I also liked Rob Hoskins' presentation. It was something about QA/QC and the wall of shame. Or it was really, I thought it was really brave of him to talk about the inner emotions or the emotional dynamics of the QA/QC process. It was very rich.
Yeah, and how people like to, I guess, blame the rater a little bit here and there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, personally, I've done a lot of performance testing, and they're like, why are you failing me? And I'm saying, I'm not failing you, I'm measuring you.
So it's day 2 now.
Yeah.
The morning of day 2, so I'm excited about a few sessions. Yeah, so the one session that I'm really excited about seeing is Envelope Equity Engagement, the Berry Farm Passive House case study.
Yeah.
And
yep, with Michael and Andy and Julie.
Yeah,
Looking forward to that.
So it's, I'm sure, going to be a very interesting presentation.
It's so tough picking which ones to go to.
I know.
Looking right now, there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see there's some technical sessions with Phius staff.
Mm-hmm.
Al Mitchell's talking about the degree-hour ratio, like a test for thermal resilience. Very excited to hear that. And then there's another one with Al again and Graham and James and Haley.
The Phius R&D.
Yeah, super excited about that.
Yeah.
And then there's the one that we're hoping to grab for an interview.
Yeah, and then the other session is going to be the massive learnings from Massachusetts multifamily, practical takeaways, and cost reduction from 20-plus certified projects.
Yeah, wow.
Can't wait to hear about that.
So Elizabeth and Beverly and Alexander. Oh.
Yeah.
Executive Director, Passive House, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Exciting.
yeah. So we'll hope to talk to them too.
Yeah. Here we go.
Here we go. We just got out of an amazing session, which was massive learnings from Massachusetts multifamily, practical takeaways and cost reduction from 20-plus certified projects. Yeah, pretty long title. We are here with the presenters. Can you introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Beverly Craig with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center.
I'm Beth Campbell. I'm the Education Program Director at Passive House, Massachusetts.
And I'm Alexander Gard-Murray, the Executive Director at Passive House, Massachusetts.
Awesome, thank you. So how has the conference been for you?
Oh, I love being in person. It's so great to see people in person and be inspired by them and learn from them.
Awesome. So tell us, what was your session about?
Well, we were really trying to have some practical takeaways from a lot of experienced multifamily projects. Some of you may know that passive house or passive building multifamily is just taking off in Massachusetts. So, yay! We have over 2,000 certified units in the state already, 5,000 design certified, and probably about 30,000 on the way in the next couple of years. So,
wow,
a lot of new people coming to the field, and that's wonderful to celebrate, but it's also a little bit of a challenge. And so I work for the state of Massachusetts, and sort of our goal is to figure out how to introduce those new teams to this way of building in a way that's going to reduce costs and not be hard for them, so they can jump over the hard parts. So that's why we partnered with Passive House Massachusetts.
So what is Passive House Massachusetts' role in this?
So we do a lot of education. Advocacy, and just trying to find ways to support all the delivery teams. And the first thing before we figured out how we were going to support all the teams was to talk to the people who've made this massive boom happen and see what things they wish they'd learned, what gaps they feel are in our educational space. And so that's why we launched an interview program that Beth led.
Great, yeah. So I had the privilege of interviewing 40 plus individuals, verifiers, CPHCs. I talked to architects, developers, GCs across the board to ask them, about their most important lessons learned, educational gaps that they're seeing in the field, and, basically where do we need to put our focus in terms of developing curriculum, developing education to make sure that we're going to be supporting these teams.
So what were some of the key lessons learned? Let's unpack them.
And we could have a 4-hour interview here to cover all these.
Okay. What's the high level summary?
High level, and we put this first in our presentation as well as in a report, and hopefully there'll be a link to the report so that you can find this easily, is that basically team values and attitude and a really can-do positive attitude will carry a project. Even if you are a new team and you haven't had direct experience doing passive building delivery, that really having a team who is willing to learn and is committed to learning from our team members is what's going to carry you across that certification line. So number one. Number two, planning, as we all know, is really critical in any big project, but especially for new teams and when you're doing passive building. So integrated project delivery becomes critical, as well as that communication piece. So those are sort of the two soft skills, I would say, that came out. And then the two other themes that are really high level are, no surprise to anybody, airtightness and ventilation. Mm-hmm. So with airtightness, discovering strategies, especially in multifamily, for effective midpoint airtightness testing, even though it's not required, that is really, there's a great quote that we have in the report. Somebody said, "I like having the answers to the test. So of course we're going to do midpoint testing." And there's a big piece of education around that. A lot of trades come on to these job sites, never even heard of passive house or passive building, let alone maybe even know that they're working on one. So some very baseline education that we need to disseminate to everybody in multiple languages to make sure that the folks who have the tools in their hands also understand what they're doing. And then in the design side, making sure that we're equipping new architectural teams with the information that they need so that they can provide a very good plan set that can then get executed in the field. So we just talked about attitude, we talked about planning, airtightness, and then the fourth major category is ventilation. And it's sort of a surprise one, I think, that's been kicking folks' butts in Massachusetts, especially with centralized ventilation systems, making sure that there's a very good plan and that there's a little bit of wiggle room, oftentimes, in the energy model if you can't quite hit those delivery rates where you need them in these low-flow ventilation systems. You've got a little bit of space there to do it, as well as educating our air HVAC teams and good effective installation, and then our testing and balancing contractors to help make sure that they understand what's being required as part of the ventilation requirements for testing and commissioning. So those are the real high level, those are the juicy tidbits. We have so much more in the report to dive into more details.
That's fantastic. Yeah, what a valuable set of insights. Yeah, and I love that just human will, human camaraderie is like high on the list. That's fantastic.
There was a couple of great anecdotes relayed to me by a couple of interviewees where they were working on a passive building project. It was sort of going south. They were missing inspections, missing airtightness targets, and for one reason or another, some of the key roles on the project got switched. Like, for example, in one case, it was a site superintendent got traded out, and all of a sudden, the new person came in, had that can-do attitude, the project started meeting all of its targets, and then, was able to hit certification. And it really has to do with just that spirit of learning and dedicated team members.
Great.
Yeah, I've actually, one of my favorite quotes is having a bad attitude is like having a flat tire. So it's, it kind of carries across. I think that was actually a running coach or something. So you can apply that to all different, kinds of things. So yeah, I can't wait to read the report too. It's super interesting. I'm sure interviewing all these people was just very eye-opening.
Absolutely.
So could you please go over how the report plans to be used?
So we are trying to bring the report into all of our educational strategy. So at the end, we kind of set out this 8-point plan to infuse it through everything we do. You can read the report yourselves by going to phmass.org. It's right there on our homepage. But we're putting the themes into all of our events. We're having a symposium on December 9th on the theme of raising standards while lowering costs, which is something that really came through over and over again in the report. We're overhauling all of our trainings. We do free trainings, Passive House 101, 201, to really dive into role-specific content for architects, engineers, builders, developers, make sure that everyone on the teams, not just the people with certifications, have information they need to succeed. We're piloting new trades training, an audience we haven't reached before, but trying to find efficient, scalable ways to get them just that little intro. Everyone on the site needs to know, don't penetrate the air barrier, but making sure that everyone knows that is non-trivial. And so we're piloting ways to do that. And then finding ways to support projects throughout their life cycle. So intervening early with new teams to say, do you guys have the information you need? Giving opportunities to come see experienced teams during mock-ups or midpoint blower door testing, making sure that they can learn from them. Overall, through everything we're doing, our goal is to help people at least not make old mistakes and try to make new ones instead as much as possible.
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. And there is also something else going on in Massachusetts that is very exciting, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that, Beth?
Yeah, well, I talked about the trend line of going up so fast, and there's a couple reasons for that. We started out with some demonstration projects. Then our utility programs added an incentive that's been very generous and really has moved the needle. And then now that there's a decent number of experienced teams, the state has allowed for communities to raise their hand and opt into a specialized stretch code that actually requires passive building certification. And so that means like 55 communities have raised their hand. That represents over 30% of the population in Massachusetts. Probably, I would guess 50% of the construction we'll see too. So it's non-trivial, and I think that sort of hockey stick is just starting to accelerate, and it's really exciting. So more teams, more learnings, and hopefully we can get to a lot of the people who are just getting introduced to this. And if we can preemptively teach them the right things, we can really drive costs down, I think.
Awesome. How about the ADUs?
Oh, yeah, accessory dwelling units. So housing shortage is really a big deal in Massachusetts. Obviously, this is focused at larger scale rentals and condos. 12,000 square feet and above is sort of what we've been talking about. But accessory dwelling units, Mass DC is doing an initiative to try and accelerate ADUs by providing information that's very easy for a homeowner who might not know where to start, what they could develop in their backyard. We have statewide legislation that allows for it to be a lot easier. So giving them the price range and what kinds of offsite construction that is very high performance and could qualify for incentives. So that's exciting too.
So I didn't hear this as part of the presentation, but how about advocacy to other states? Is that in the works? Or?
We are always ready to talk to people. So for example, Austin, Texas has an affordable housing sort of demonstration program that's sort of modeled on what our state agency did for a demonstration project. Denver, the city of Denver, I believe, has an incentive that's sort of like the Mass Save one. We've talked to a number of utilities. ACEEE, we tend to go there and tell all the consultants who might want to have market transformation, new construction programs, that this has been really changing the face of Massachusetts housing. So yes, and we're happy to talk anytime. We have some great data as well, and more coming. So
wonderful.
And PH Mass is a nonprofit as well, and so we're also happy. We see it as part of our mission to share the story of how this has happened and the lessons that we're learning, and to learn from others. and all the things that are going around the country. So we are always happy to talk with anyone. Please reach out to us.
Yeah, love it.
We're friendly.
Yes, for sure. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and on behalf of everyone involved, particularly your occupants, thank you for doing what you're doing.
We couldn't be happier to be doing it.
This is the end of day 2, the end of the conference, actually. And what do you think?
I think it went so fast, and I think it was so great. It goes fast because it's just a steady blur of interactions and conversations and thoughts. And,
yeah. So what do you think about just kind of going back to the conference theme?
Let's see, that's a quiz. This theme was performance, purpose, and power of community.
Yeah. So did we hit it all?
Oh, yeah. Saw a lot of high-performance buildings, electrification performance. I just watched one now on performing test and balance on duct systems. Really important topic, really well done, very well unpacked. Purpose, what do you think of that?
Well, I think that's why we are all here, right? I think we find purpose in what we do. And it's really important, certainly really important for me. I don't think I would do it if I didn't see purpose in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that somehow in these times we're in, just leave that for what it is, the purpose is all the more poignant, all the more necessary, right?
Yeah.
It actually feels more substantial. We need to swim upstream.
Yeah. And it can be quite exhausting, and that's why you need the power of community.
There you go. Swimming upstream together.
Yeah.
For those of us that have been to many Phius conferences, the community is like the best part for sure. It's, you don't pay the registration and buy the airline tickets in the hotel thinking I'm really just going to hang out with friends, but ultimately you do. You hang out like friends with purpose.
Yeah, and you only see them once or twice a year, most likely. And it's kind of amazing how well you know these people by now.
Yeah.
And how tight that connection is, although you really don't see them very often.
Yeah, that's really rich. Some psychologists should study that. Like people that are mission focused and, the bell only rings twice a year, but they still come right back to it's like that. It's like it just resets right back to where we were last time we were together, as though it were yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's wrap it up for this year.
Fantastic. Thank you. Enjoyed spending time with you as always, Ilka.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for joining forces again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to do it over and over. And I look forward to hearing the wrap-up from the rest of the Passive House Accelerator group.
Yeah, let's hear what Jay, Michael, Shannon, and Zach have to say about the conference.
Right. Wow. Well, I have to say, I'm still going through my notes and just trying to summarize in my head, but Steve Hennigan just gave a pretty amazing keynote at the end that about, this sounds insane, but the physical world is a non-linear system. And that was the takeaway, and just looking at decay rates of buildings, and on top of that, you have increasing energy prices or utility prices, and how we should factor that into kind of our appraisals of building, and the value of high-performance building just goes through the roof when that happens. And that's one more reason to build a super durable, efficient building. And on top of that, I thought one of the really cool projects I got to learn about was Madison, Wisconsin's first market rate passive house, which I'm hopefully going to be writing about, so I won't spoil anything, but expect that in the future because it's a really interesting project. And with that, I'll pass off to Michael.
I thought today's session was great, and as were yesterday's. I would say my key takeaways from PhiusCon 2025 was just how much is happening beyond Passive House, and truly happening. So, and I've said this before, but I feel like everybody kind of won up that, from mass timber and what's going right and what's wrong. Then we had Jacob talking about what we should be looking at with low carbon materials and the effects, and some really key pieces there, like the like how important it is to make those decisions very early in the project, and how they'll affect the project, and your ability to affect the project really dwindles as the project goes along. Some really key pieces and citing actual projects and where they made the decisions and what they could have done better. And then before that, I really enjoyed my interview for the Reimagine Building Collective with Al, which everybody will hear soon. And I loved hearing about Revive after that, the actual projects. So I heard from Al kind of what he was doing, why he wanted to do it, what he was up to, his thesis, all of that, and then getting into seeing what's happening with Revive right now in actual projects. And for me as a practitioner, I just got really excited about doing more of this kind of work, and it was cool. I found the whole thing to be pretty inspirational. I also found the manufacturers that showed up to be really cool. Zach and I did that walkthrough today with Shannon, and it was supposed to be like a half hour. I think it was an hour and a half. There was a lot going on, and it's because they keep developing new solutions for everything that everybody's talking about in the sessions, and so many new things that I didn't know about. So it was a good one. I enjoyed this, and so many good conversations they got a lot of good people to show up to Milwaukee. This was cool. And here's Shannon.
Yeah, thanks. PhiusCon is always my favorite conference. I look forward to it every year, and reason being is the way that they push forward the envelope. Now it's passive building. It's not passive house. I'm still getting used to that as a concept and being able to wrap my language around it. But also that evolution, it's part of the entire culture of the group that comes here. And so all of the case studies that were presented, they were pushing that envelope. They were evolving their projects, their processes. And what I really found interesting was the creative lending that was happening in projects. The one done by Kara Hegarty of Onion Flats was incredible because they were saying, if you build it, you own it. And they created an ownership equity structure around the project where the subcontractors were investing in the equity instead of the fees. And it created an entirely different buyback structure, and also a different impetus for quality and teamwork above anything I've ever seen. And that theme of being creative and just understanding the group that comes to this conference as a culture of influencers, and for it to wrap up with the keynote about questioning, how do we look at financing? How do we look at valuing what we do, especially in the face of how appraisals will be changing in the next year, is my big takeaway from this. But the projects, the retrofits, all of the ways that this standard is changing is very inspirational, and I'm excited for everyone to see the slides from the presentations, see the interviews that everyone from the Accelerator has done, and looking forward to next year in Arizona, in Phoenix.
That's right, October 10th through 12th, PhiusCon. So that also means that it's PhiusCon next year, and not a joint thing with Greenbuild like happened last year. So we're back to a couple back-to-back PhiusCons, which is cool. The keynote from Steve Hannigan I also thought was really awesome, and I think that one of the core things that he talked about was that we need to just push back on the simple payback, and he laid out all the reasons for that, and it was very compelling. I was really struck by the presentation by Beth Campbell, Alexander Gard-Murray, and Bev Craig. So Bev Craig, listeners will know, thanks to her work with Passive House Accelerator Live, and probably are familiar with her work at Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, where she's been really instrumental in policy development in Massachusetts. And Beth Campbell and Alex Gard-Murray are both are relatively new staffers. They are the staff for Passive House Massachusetts. And Beth just finished an amazing study that included over 40 interviews with practitioners many of whom are actually already building this wave of multifamily passive house projects in Massachusetts, and others that are involved. And all they're bringing all these takeaways and really actionable things around mindset and planning and communication and airtightness and windows and doors and ventilation, like all these different elements, and really getting fairly granular about their recommendations based on that. And so there's a report that we can share in show notes that resulted from that work. But in addition to how interesting that was, this is just a really critical moment for success in Massachusetts. Bev described a passive building iceberg of 30,000 units, on directly on their way in Massachusetts, and success with delivering those is so important. So I was very impressed by Beth and Alexander and Bev, of course, and felt like that Passive House Massachusetts at this critical moment is in really good hands, and I think that's just really important. So,
well, awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a wrap. Thanks. We'll see everyone in Arizona and Phoenix in 2026.
All right. Well, that was great, Ilka. It's a lot of work, I know, to pull all those interviews together into a fairly succinct summary like that. And there's a lot in there. And it's also great to hear your voices at the end there with a summary of the conference, along with Michael Ingui and Shannon as well. Ilka, reflecting back on that now, is there sort of one big takeaway or main highlight from the event for you?
Well, I think first, it's just always so hard to really obviously you can't really go to every session. So picking the ones to interview for this episode is definitely hard. And I guess there should have been a lot more voices on there, but of course we don't have time for that. So there was a lot more going on that we didn't get to talk about. But I think for me, the main takeaway, and I think we talked about that in these interviews quite a bit, is the power of the community, just going there and meeting up with people, because it does get, a little exhausting sometimes when you sit in your office and figure out these projects, and you don't always have a community behind you, and going to these events just really recharges you, and because you all of a sudden feel like you have support there, and you hear what other people are doing, and that they're dealing with similar issues or not, and share successes. So I think that's definitely always the highlight for me.
Nice. Yeah, I like that idea of friends with purpose. Zach, what about yourself? Any sort of headline highlight for you?
Well, yeah, there are many, but I think just reflecting on the interviews that we just heard, I was struck by Kai Fast's description or expansion of the cell analogy, and this notion that there's this this ecosystem, and that we all are playing our own role. And I think that really resonates with me in that we're tackling really big challenges, and I think this follows right on to what Ilka was just saying. And I think in our own offices or seats, that can feel overwhelming, and it's valuable to remember. It's important to remember that there are thousands of other people around the world also working on this problem, and maybe it's more. When it comes to the climate crisis writ large, it's millions, I'm sure. And so moments where we can come together and see each other, see the other cells that are part of this organism or elements of this ecosystem, it's powerful, and it's something that's said often, but that doesn't mean that it's not, like, it is really true. And it's so I came away definitely energized from the conference, because I was reminded of all the great work that so many people are doing, the exponential growth that's happening with passive building projects in North America. And I guess the other analogy that we were playing, that Tom was playing with, was that analogy of swimming upstream, and that the currents feel really strong. And I think that's right now, and I think that's true. And also that we are stronger. We're stronger fish right now than we were 10 years ago. So it's just good to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, really great stuff in there. For me, I've been thinking about this concept of whether passive houses are perhaps too stable, and that we've heard the stories of getting up in the morning and not really being sure what clothes to put on because you got no idea what it is outside, which seems counter to this idea of a connection to reality or a connection to nature, and this sort of tension between the concept of a passive house being a really effective barrier between the inside and the outside, yet we want to have more of a connection to the natural environment. And it seems like a bit of those are opposing ideas, and I haven't fully resolved that except the fact that it's about control. And you want the outside to stay outside, except for when you don't. And a passive house allows you have that control. So when the doors are closed, when the windows are closed, they are properly closed. But that doesn't mean that they have to be closed all the time, and that you can enjoy the outdoors and hear the birds and breathe ideally fresh air or even cleaner air than the outdoor air in some instances. I think that's a really interesting thought about the long-term health of being super stable in that environment, and the fact that humans do need some stresses. That's the whole point of having exercise, but it's doing that in a controlled way. So I think there's a little bit more to explore there, but it's a similar thought that I've had about that concept of really effective building envelopes and what that means for human health. So yeah, no conclusions on that one, but a really interesting thing to think about. A lot in there. Thank you very much, Ilka. Like I said at the top, and it's quite a big job, having attempted that myself, of trying to collect a taste of everything that goes on in a conference like that. And I think you did a fantastic job. So thank you very much. A lot in there, and yeah, looking forward to PhiusCon 2026 already. So, but before that, Zach, bring us back to reality right now. What have we got coming up?
Yeah,
over at the
absolutely.
Accelerator?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to give a shout out to Kristof Irwin and his podcast, the Building Science Podcast. It was really great to have Kristof join Ilka as a guest interviewer. And please check out his really excellent work at the Building Science Podcast. So at the Accelerator and the Reimagine Buildings Collective this week, we've got a packed week as we tend to. Wednesday, we have a Passive House Accelerator live episode called Field Notes Summer Lab Report. And this is the second of 2 lab reports from the Reimagine Summer Labs within the Reimagine Buildings Collective. And we are going to be hearing about the key insights from these different labs around phased retrofits and resilience. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then on Thursday, we have Cascadia Windows and Doors will be joining us for Wildfire Resistance, Window Strategies for Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI design. So a special component spotlight from Cascadia. So big thank you to Cascadia for being a supporter of ours and for offering this programming on Thursday. And then on Friday, within the Reimagine Buildings Collective, we have an Ask Me Anything Friday with Ed May, the Passive House modeling expert and extraordinaire. So that's going to be great too. Lots of good stuff.
Lots of good stuff. All right. Well, that's a wrap for this week and for this PhiusCon. Thank you very much again, Ilka. Really appreciate, and the rest of the team at the Accelerator. Good to see you both, and we'll be back again next week on the Passive House Podcast.